Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Crypto Insider channel. I am the Crypto Insider, back with another cryptocurrency video. It is June 17th, 2020, and today we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff. This video today mainly is getting back to the roots of just dealing with XRP and the various things that are going on in the crypto news regarding XRP. Before we dive into all of it, I'd like to say that I am not a certified financial planner, registered investment advisor, tax accountant, stockbroker, and for today's purposes, I am not a legal expert on securities. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that are securities and how Ripple is probably going to argue this in some of their lawsuits, or how they should argue it. I'm sure a lot of these areas are going to be covered by their lawyers. Before we do that, though, let's get in and look at some of the price action that's going on in the crypto world. Bitcoin dominance largely unchanged, 65-66%. Market cap sitting at 265 billion. No major gainers in the top 10. I mean, ADA Cardano's up 5%, so that's good. XLM's up a little bit from yesterday. Nothing really great gains or losses to speak of in the top 10 by market cap. Per our last video, when I said XRP would reclaim 19 cents, it was just maybe an hour or two after the video came out where we got there. We really were good at sticking to that 20-cent resistance. And so I didn't really have much of a fear that we were going to slip too far below where we were. You never know. Crypto is volatile in the way things go. But I was pretty confident in making that prediction. So score one for the Crypto Insider. In any case, I've been wrong before, so I won't get too swelled of a head. Let's go down and look at our H bar. It is up since yesterday. It's reclaimed that 4-cent mark. Probably off of some of the good news with the recent additions to its governing council. So we'll keep our eye on that, and hopefully it starts to climb up the market cap list. Bitcoin, Ethereum, yeah, no real big changes since yesterday. I expect that we're going to see some movement soon easily within the next week or so. You know, when these things tend to happen are usually when I'm out, and since I'm going to be out starting at the end of next week, that's when the major stuff's going to happen, and I'm going to be like, oh, I wish I was making videos because I could talk all about this stuff, and I won't be able to. Our Cornerlize page just again shows XRP at that 19-cent mark, kind of a few mixed indicators over the past 5 minutes. This could all change. Hopefully we start to see some good price increases here. I just watched a little bit of a DIY investing video where he is predicting that we're near a reversal, or at least breaking some descending resistance. And once we do that, he's predicting prices of 30 to 50 cents in the short term. I'd love to see that. I'm sure all of you would as well. Anything in the green direction is the right direction. So this story comes out, and I'm reading it in a few different places, not just Forbes, because we all know how crappy Forbes can be when it comes to crypto, specifically XRP writing. So this article is by Michael Del Castillo. XRP isn't a security, declares former CFTC chairman. That's some pretty powerful words, but one of the things I noticed when I started reading these articles, all these news outlets are framing it as a bad thing, and here I've highlighted a section. The only problem is he's no longer a regulator. In fact, his employer is on the his employer is on the payroll of Ripple, the largest single owner of XRP, whose co-founders actually created the cryptocurrency. Okay. So what? I don't see why that's relevant to the news story, unless you have a good reason to sort of uh, implicate some sort of collusion or some uh, underhanded dealings. I don't see why you would try to smear Mr. Giancarlo with this for really no reason. A lot of people, when there's a legal question, will hire experts. And, this goes back to before I was a fintech specialist. I was a breath alcohol expert, believe it or not, and I've testified many times in cases regarding breath alcohol tests and breath alcohol devices and how they have to be kept and how they have to be accuracy checked. Um, but because I worked at a company that sold breath alcohol devices as well, that was never brought up as any kind of a conflict. And I'm seeing the same sort of thing here. This is just the field this guy works in. And if you're going to use somebody as a legal witness, you want somebody that knows what the hell they're talking about. So it really doesn't make sense. But apparently, there's a bombshell paper titled Cryptocurrencies and U.S. Security Laws Beyond Bitcoin and Ether, co-authored by commodities lawyer Conrad Balk of the New York law firm Wilkie, Farr, and Gallagher. Methodically reviews the criteria of the Howey test. Now, the Howey test is something in banking that's used to determine whether something's a security. And I'm sure if you're really into XRP and getting into the nitty gritty, you've heard people talk about it before. There are basically four main points of the Howey test, some of which XRP could be seen shaky on, and some XRP is really strong on. So there's a bit of interpretation that's going to be used, when reviewing that criteria of the Howey test. Established by the SEC in 1946 to determine whether something is a security, and point by point argues that XRP does not qualify. Rather, the paper argues, like its name would indicate, cryptocurrency is a currency of perhaps more interest to the Federal Reserves and central banks than security regulators. Um, Here's a quote. Ultimately, under a fair application of the Howey test in the SEC's presently expanding analysis, XRP should not be regulated as a security, but instead considered a currency or a medium of exchange. Now, I think this article just talks about the Howey test, but there is another test when we try to determine whether something is a security. It's called the family resemblance test. So even if something fails the Howey test, if the device, the instrument, or whatever we're determining to be a security matches a bunch of other types of the same devices that are not securities, then uh, it doesn't meet the family resemblance criteria and can still be considered not a security. And so why I'm bringing that up is because Bitcoin and Ethereum have already received letters indicating that they are not a security. So, under the family resemblance test, XRP is probably also going to be considered not a security. So that's another thing. The Howey test may not even apply. I don't know how Ripple's legal team is going to argue this, but I think they have a really good chance in these lawsuits. All right, so let's move on to this story I keep seeing popping up. CNBC.com made a list of disruptors, companies that are disrupting the way we do things, and Ripple hit number 28. In a world, and I really liked this, in a world where video can be streamed from the International Space Station, it's crazy to think that the fastest way to move money from San Francisco to Bangkok is to bring it in a suitcase on a plane. And that's true. If you want to get money to Bangkok, the best way to the best way is to get cash, jump on a plane, hope you're not robbed in between destinations, and fly it to Bangkok. It's quicker. The settlement is done much faster. Rick goes on to say Ripple's goal is to change all that through the use of blockchain, and of course we know how they're doing it with their ODL solution. Um, it also uses an interbank messaging system, memo posting. In other words, sort of like Swift, that's used by banks to send money around the world. In its other products, ODL is not Ripple's only means of sending XRP around. So, I thought this was a nice article and not unfair to Ripple. It really uh, you know, when you deal with crypto media or crypto stories, it seems like a lot of people don't like Ripple, and I don't know if it's because there's a big company behind it, and we're starting to train ourselves to hate big companies. I don't know if they're kind of you know the reporting is falling subject to that, and therefore it's biased. But in this case, I appreciated the story. It was kind of on point with facts rather than you know biased talking points. Um, this is from Cointelegraph.com by Colin Post. New acting head of U.S. bank regulator talks about innovation, expands financial inclusion, and the government's role in building frameworks for crypto. Um, and it talks about when the coronavirus hit or the COVID-19, how they had to deal with some of the archaic infrastructure that was in place for their PPP program and their stimulus. And one of the quotes here is the banks did a heroic job of trying to do that, and they eventually were able to do that. But they were trying to do so through a portal run by the Small Business Administration that was built on COBOL in the 80s. The programmers who were able to fix those bugs had to be called out of retirement to help fix them. It was a clunky system we had to work with. And that's just one example of how of our government using this outdated technology that there aren't even a lot of people left to work on. In the Small Business Administration, you have COBOL, but if you're looking at the Veterans Administration, if you're looking at a lot of hospitals, a lot of old banks, you can refer back to one of my other videos where I talk about mumps. Mumps is also a very old language that a lot of these places are trying to get away from, but until then, if you need work done in mumps, you're really going to be hunting for a programmer or M. They would call it if you're into programming. You may have heard of the term M. Mumps was kind of thrown out a long time ago, but I'm an old guy now, so sometimes I use some of the old terminology. Um, Here's another thing that I thought was worthwhile to highlight. What I heard from my friends in the crypto community was imagine a future where instead of having to rely on all of these cobbled together parts, a bank that was using legacy technology to underwrite a borrower couldn't do KYC because he wasn't a legacy customer. All of those pieces. Imagine if we could distribute this aid through Ripple, that mentioning it by name, or through stablecoins of some kind or something else. Imagine if we had already implemented central bank digital currency and we could distribute this across the blockchain instantaneously. So people are seeing the worth of technologies like Ripple. It's not the first time they've been mentioned by somebody of note. This person happens to be Brian Brooks, who is acting head of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. So very interesting to have him mention Ripple by name in that, and then kind of qualify it and say, oh, but there's also other ones, there's stable coins or some other way. Uh, and then, there's a little bit. Specifically, he looked at DeFi as a way of shifting the burdens of loans away from a central budget drawing on taxes. So he's talking about DeFi, he's talking about all the right things in the right way. Just one more example of it. So I guess the scenarios are what happens if XRP is declared a security? Well, even if, I'm kind of jumping around, so bear with me. Even if XRP is declared a security, let's say they ignore the family resemblance test I was telling you about, and they ignore the Howey test that the other guy wrote his paper on. There are still exemptions. You can still apply for exemptions if you're declared a security and have a reason to do that. There's a few different instances where that's occurred, and I would expect Ripple to go that way. So I wouldn't be too focused on the security debate right now. I think Ripple has a good chance of winning it, and even if they don't, there is redress beyond that. Um, the most likely scenario is that XRP will be declared not a security. And at that point, I think you'll see probably it will have more impact on the price of XRP than any of the news stories to this point. We've got two things that I think hamper the price of XRP. One is circulating supply. You can't beat the law of supply and demand. We have a lot of supply, and that's just the way it is. We need people to start buying that supply in large numbers, banks, different financial custodians, to buy that XRP up, buy up that circulating supply, and make the stuff harder to get. That's one thing we have to overcome, and two is this whole security debate. I know those financial institutions, those same ones I was talking about, aren't going to want to risk holding on to an asset that may or may not be a security depending on the outcome of lawsuits and in different boards and commissions. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all this stuff. We will keep our eye on it. We will keep reporting on it, or not reporting. I hate to think of myself as a reporter, but at least commenting in my way on it. So let's get towards the end of the video. If you are following our charitable donations, we did donate for the new subscribers and for the members. If you become a member to the Crypto Insider channel, we will continue donating on your specific behalf every month to @GoodXRP. So we donated 3 XRP to @GoodXRP. They broke it off, sent it to, I think, those 6 charities. Maybe there are more that just haven't got onto a poll yet. There used to be 9, so I don't know what happened to those other 3. If they're in the process, St. Jude's was on there. It's not on there anymore. But for each new subscriber and for each member, we do donate some XRP to @GoodXRP on your behalf. There is going to be some members only content coming up. Hopefully I'm going to get some pictures and stuff from my vacation and things like that I can put on the channel here. But there will never be any real crypto content that's members only that you'd have to pay for in order to see. But you can check out the different member levels and benefits of those levels by clicking on the membership part of the channel. Beyond that, I'm going to pop up some additional links for you to click on if you want to continue your Crypto Insider journey, and we will see you the next time we make a video.